And apologies for that, folks. We had some internet issues there. I was trying to ask Dave, so working from home, you've got your day job, as an author for you. For other people, that's a different job. You've got the kids at home too. How do you balance those two things and still do a good job of both? What's a couple of tips for the rest of us?
It's really hard. And I think it's about learning your limits. So between fall of 2019 and early winter of 21, which, January, February, I wrote and released 10 books, which is a 14-month span. And it was too much. So take into account 21, right? So that's, COVID hit in March of 2020. My wife is a ER nurse, or was an ER nurse. She's a nurse practitioner now, was going to school for that at the time and doing clinicals on top of work. Wow. And my kids were, 3. And I learned the hard way that you can't do everything. You might want to, and you might have these pulls to do these things, but if you need a break, you need a break. And I released my last book in March of 21, and then I didn't release another one until March of 22, and now I have another one in May of 22. So I'm back into my thing, but I burned myself out really bad. And what made me realize it was I was irritable, and I was having more watching my kids and deal with them. And, there's a balance to it, and you have to find it. But until you do, things are really hard. I have a Neo 2. It's like a word processor that I write on. I don't like to use the laptop or whatever. Like, this thing is an ancient device. It's just word processor. That's it. Like a calculator screen. Yeah. And then you plug it into the computer. You send the words over. It's nice and it's portable, and the kids will play outside, and I take it with me. I got into dictation, which is actually super frustrating, but I think I write better that way, because you're speaking aloud. You have to really catch yourself and make sure your sentences flow. And I was just using something like otter.ai on my phone, and then doing it the hard way of taking just chunks of gross text, putting them into a Word doc, and then going in and editing them. But I like that flow too. So I kind of have two different ways of writing that both involve not sitting at my computer and being around my kids and dealing with them. And you kind of got to get good at setting your goals realistically. And like I said, I did too much. I found myself getting frustrated at really strange things and realized, yeah, I'm working too much, too hard. This, it can wait. And it was hard, but I was lucky enough to have a little bit of a back catalog going on, so I can still promote things every month. I can still do okay sales wise and not take a big hit for it. Being an indie author especially is not easy, and it's expensive, and a lot of people don't talk about that. Yeah. There's a startup cost, right? You have to have decent covers. Look, you do. I commissioned my first cover from a friend, and I had a graphic design degree from way back when, and I did some of it, and it was fine. It was good. It wasn't to market. And I went and I tried to do that again for my next one. And then I realized, oh man, I'm really messing up here. So I went just like a cover marketplace, found a bunch of to-market covers. They're not my favorite in the world, but you know what? They work for the genre. They're good. They sell copies. And I had to give that up of like, I want control over everything. It's like, nope, these aren't for me. These are for sales. So I had to spend money on that, and then editing. Editing is, depending on where you're at in your author journey, it's expensive. I'm fortunate enough that I have a good editor I work with now. And I just have this like little bit of, I send pretty clean manuscript over, and I just need some basic, copy editing and maybe a little bit of proofreading. And for some people that's not the case, and they have to go the whole developmental route, and that's expensive. That's really expensive.
You are running into thousands of dollars then.
Yeah, and that's what I think the hardest thing is, of like having kids and trying to justify spending money. That's why I stopped. My kids were born in 2016. I released Terminus Cycle in March of 2015, and then I was working on Sidonia Rising, which is now the first book of that series. I deprecated that other book because I wrote it when I was angry. I don't know if people understand that, but if you write angry, it shows, and it's ugly. I had to go back and fix that. It's like a side book now in my series, and it's good. It's got backstory. I had to go back and fix it because it was angry, and I realized, like, yeah, trying to make your protagonist unlikable makes your book hard to read. And I realized that when I released the second book, and I wrote it as like a kind of soft reboot of like, you don't need the first book. I did it on purpose because I knew, and then the sell through was just really bad, so I just went ahead and kind of
Is
pushed it
that
aside.
good? One of the upsides of being in indie is that you can go back and
You can
completely
but
rewrite that book if you need to.
yeah, but it was hard. I spent a lot of money and on that first book, and then you have those hard time with the sales and stuff, and then I was working on the other one, and then found out my wife was pregnant with twins, and that's expensive, and I stopped. I was like, I can't afford this anymore, and then I didn't go back until 2019. So I took a bunch of years off of just like, nope, I can't do this anymore because it's too expensive to do. I waited, I saved up money, and I went back and did it right. And then I still probably did it wrong for that series. It was kind of a mess. And then the next one, I read tons of books in the market. I made sure I knew what I was doing. I made sure like hit my length that I wanted to hit, which, at the time, like 60,000 words was pretty okay for a space opera book. Now we're kind of airing a little bit longer, and I'm still like in that range because I'm more comfortable writing that. I have a good like head formula. I am the definition of a pantser. I don't write anything down. I don't take notes. I don't plan anything. I just go, and it works best that way for me. I had to learn that.
But that's interesting. You said you still have a plan in your head.
Yeah, I have an idea of what I want. And the way I used to write is I would write the first act, then I would write the last act, then I would go and fill in the middle act. So I would piece everything together, and it worked.
Yeah.
But it required a ton of revisions. Like it just needed a lot of patchwork. And then, so if you look at my timeline, I released Terminus Cycle in 2015, Sidonia Rising in 2019, and it was mostly written in 2016. It was mostly done by then. I had a little bit of rewriting and revisiting to fix it up. Then Ganymede's Gate came out. That was the book that I figured out how I should be writing books. So that it was a long journey to get there, to figure out how should I be writing books? Like, how should I be sitting there in my head, figure this out, not do the whole act 1, act 3, act 2. Like, how can I just go through, make something clean, and kind of get a process going? And I found it with that one and continued through it. And I have a pretty happy place with where I'm at with how I write now. And although I still take breaks, I have become a large proponent of, there's people out there doing great and they sell a ton of books and they just release a book a month. I get it. If you're on Amazon, that's the way to go if you can do it. If you can't, you're going to burn yourself out real bad. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be angry. Nobody should live like that, especially when like there's a point in your career early on, and probably for the first couple of years, where you're not making any money, and you're just like, you see people. I'm not one of those people that see somebody be like, hey, I made 5 figures this month, I made 6 figures. I don't get inspired by that. I just think, oh, well, that's good for you, but I don't know what to do with this information because I'm struggling. And seeing I don't have the hustle culture mentality of like, if I just work harder, it's like, man, I'm already working really hard. So I can't work any harder without alienating all the people in my life. So I definitely have at this point realized that, having happy people around me is more important than trying to force things to happen faster than they should. They'll happen eventually if they're gonna happen, and just keep trying. I think the hardest part of being an indie author is realizing that it's about volume. It doesn't have to be immediate volume. It's just over time, and you see the growth with every single book. And if you can make a series longer, you do it. If you can't, try to do another one that does, try to find what works for you.
So that's a natural place for me to kind of ask the second last question I had planned in my head, which is, how do you, particularly because you said you're a pantser, like you're pretty much making up a lot of it as you go, how do you keep a long running series, 8 books fresh, interesting to the reader, interesting to you, so you don't get bored with it too.
I mean, at this point, I just finished Trastero 5. That's on pre-order right now. It's coming out May 6th. So just about a month from now, we're recording it.
Cool.
And then I have a pre-order up for book 6, which I haven't even started yet, but you know, it'll get done. And that to me is going to be my hard stopping point for that series. I might branch off and do more. The truth is that both series are pretty connected by theme and some of the content, and I can work with that at some point. But the way that I've kept myself going is I alternate. Having 2 series is nice, maybe for readers or maybe for business perspective of like, you know, you should have a completed series or whatever. It's not the best thing, but for somebody like me who gets bored really easily, I alternate and I take breaks. I write stuff for me. I have a book that I wrote last year that I don't know if I'll ever do anything with. It's 130,000 words of really weird stuff, and it's good. It might need some work, and that might be my biggest hesitation point with it, but for now, I don't care. And then I started another one that's an entirely different thing last year. It's probably more in line with magical realism or urban fantasy, and I put that aside last year, and I came back to it after finishing Trastero 5 a couple of weeks ago, and was just like, whoa, this is amazing. I can't believe I thought this was bad. I take breaks and I write stuff for me. If I do anything with these in the future, I don't know. There's always that allure. And now that we're seeing the big jump in Kickstarters because Brandon Sanderson made $30 million.
Oh yeah, everybody's going to be on there now.
I was planning, I wrote this book last year called Inquisition of Lazarus, and it was gonna be my, like, I'm gonna try to do hybrid and maybe, you know, get an agent for this one because it's weird. It's closer to a lot of stuff that you see traditionally published in science fiction than it is to like indie stuff. And look, I you know, like, I have no allegiance to one thing or the other. I want my books to go where I think they're gonna go do okay. And I have no, like, I get it. You can make more money as an indie. You definitely can, as long as you fit in the right categories. I don't really fit in the right categories, so I'm going to try whatever I can at this point. So I was going to do a Kickstarter for it, but I decided to put it aside because it's a very strange book, and some of the timeliness, you know, it's about billionaires ruining space, and then Jeff Bezos went to space like right after I finished writing it, and I'm just like, oh god, they're all going to think this is what I'm writing about.
It was about Bezos, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just like,
there goes your Amazon account straight away.
Oh god, I know. And I'm like, I need to give this some time to sit, right? Like, I don't want, you know, I wrote a post-apocalyptic book around the time my kids were born, and it was a love letter to Mad Max. That's what it was, because those are like some of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, I saw Fury Road in the theater like 6 or 7 times. You know, it's just, there's so much to love about all those. And so that's what I did, and I did it with, and it's funny because I used parts of that for Intergalactic Bastard because there was like arena combat stuff in it too. Yep. And I've released it and under a pen name at one point, and then took it down because I'm like, ugh. And I held on to it for a real long time because the person, I wrote it originally in 2005, and then I went back to it in 2014. And, you know, it's about a real estate magnate who owns a bunch of gaudy buildings with his name emblazoned across him, who destroys the world with nuclear bombs. And releasing that in 2016 would feel a little bit too much like I'm pointing a finger at a certain person.
It's certain, yes.
So I just was like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. And now I released it under my Patreon as a serial, you know, because it's I like it. It's fun, but I don't really know what else to do with it. It doesn't fit in with my catalog of work, and I have a sequel half written, and maybe someday I'll do something with that. But I found that sometimes you write stuff and you don't have to do anything with it sometimes too. You don't have to monetize every part of your life. You know, like you have, as an author, I think there's a lot of people that look and see like, my first book is going to be it. And it's like, well, my first book I wrote in 2006, and it was terrible. It was really bad. And I kept trying to go back to it. And that was my biggest hang up between 2006 and 2012, is I kept going back to the same idea and trying to make it work, and just, okay, scrap it, start all over again. And, like, it didn't matter. All this last time I got 40,000 words in. Let's see if you can get further. Okay, this time you get 80,000 words. Scrap it again. I did that over and over again.
Wow.
And it was a learning experience, I think. But I also learned what
but I
not
think,
to do.
Just interrupt it. Yeah, exactly. Not what not to do. And I think we need those spaces to practice that, where it doesn't matter if we run into a dead end, or you read it back the next day and it's just awful and you think, no, I can't do that. But at least you've done something with your writing gift. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I'm a musician on top of everything else. And when I was a kid learning how to play guitar, I didn't sit there and record my practice sessions and say, here's an album, listen to it. Like, no, I waited 20 years before releasing anything with the band. Like, I waited until I was super good at it. So it's like, why, as a writer, was I trying to do all these things when, like, I went to college for writing, but my workshops were all, short fiction. Like, the longest thing I'd ever done was like 20 pages long. So being like, well, I'm going to switch to long form now and it's going to be fine. No, of course it wasn't fine. It's like anything else. You have to get, even though, and it was hard to admit, right? I have a writing degree. Of course I'm good at this, right? And it's like, no, not really. And, you start comparing yourself. You're like, I'm smarter than this guy. I can do better than that. You read a book and you're like, I can do way better than this. And it's like, yeah, you can, but not now. Like, this person actually put in their work. They put in their hours. And even if you don't think it's the greatest thing ever, it's still something that you paid for and read, or, so it's, there's a forced humility that comes with it, that even you can be the smartest and most talented person in the world. When you're doing something that's harder or new, you have to adjust to it. And I was happy I learned that lesson at some point. It didn't come easy. There's a lot of bad books that I wrote, probably 2 or 3 that aren't anywhere right now, and from early on, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
And they've contributed to the good stuff that's out there, and people are enjoying. So yeah,
it's getting your reps in. It's the hardest thing. You got to get your reps in, and once you do, everything gets better.
That's it. So final question. I really appreciate your time today, Dave. We'll have split this into two episodes because of the kind of wonkiness of the internet in the middle there, the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
There'll be other writers watching. Some of them are established, some of them are up and coming. But do you have a writing prompt, like a writing exercise for them, or else a book recommendation, something you think would be great for them to read, particularly sci-fi authors?
Oh, so I think science fiction authors should read other kinds of books sometimes. And I think because there's a lot of really cool stuff out there that exists outside of the norm. And sometimes you pick up things from different places. I'm not going to say, like, read a Don DeLillo book or read a, Thomas Pynchon, although I would recommend anybody read Thomas Pynchon's any of his books, because they're funny, and they should be funny. You don't look at them and say they're serious. Please don't think they're serious. They're all written by an immature stoner. But anyway, I would probably say try reading China Miéville's Perdido Street Station. It's a weird book. It's long. It has places where it's really dragging, but it's like a science fiction / fantasy book that is complicated, but it has some really cool structural stuff. And I think it's important to see these things, just like it's important, if you like movies, to like occasionally watch some really long art movie, just to kind of get a feel for, like, okay, I didn't love this, but there's such cool things here. And like I said, I love David Lynch, so I am not afraid to dip into the weird stuff. And I think more people should, even if you don't like it, read stuff you don't like. And I'm not saying read romance books if you don't like it. Like, although I did this as an exercise for myself, and I was shocked at how well written a lot of romance books are.
Yeah,
And
I read a couple of years ago for that very reason, just to
yeah,
get myself out of
I
the
wanted to
genre.
see what it was. I wanted to see like science fiction romance too. That sells really well.
Mm.
And if you have to go out there and just be like, all right, fine, I'm gonna read this Ice Planet Barbarians thing. That's Ruby Dixon. I think she does really well, super popular, sells a ton of books. Just really well written, like, and you can see your tropes in there, right? You can see why people like these kind of books. And then if you try reading more, you see, okay, there's the formula. I found the formula to these, and I don't necessarily enjoy the formula, but I think finding people that write a little different than you is a lot more interesting. I think reading what you love, obviously, yeah, do that all the time. You should be happy reading because it's fun and it's enjoyable, but you should definitely go out of your comfort zone sometimes. I did last couple of years, and I found that I like a lot more stuff than I thought I did, and I'm happy with that. So, it's
fantastic advice, I think, stretching ourselves. And that is feeding that craft as well.
Yeah.
If nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, it's important. You just, as a writer, you should probably know what else is out there and how you can always sample from things. You can always sample and find cool things, even if it's not the greatest, like for you or for your audience thing.
Yeah.
Find a cool way to present a character. It's there. Trust me.
It's fantastic. David's latest book the details will be in the information underneath this video, folks. David, I really want to thank you for your time today, mate.
Yeah, of course. It was a pleasure.
All right. And I'll talk to you all soon.